our discussion, if you want to go ahead and get out your the slide packet for the license law and rules, the one that we started last week and did a small portion of, and I said we would come back and do it in sections. The North Carolina license law and rules packet, we're going to pick that back up, and then we will work on chapter 8 tomorrow. And so I'm going to load up those slides here, and we're going to talk about license law and rules. We previously talked about what the rules were for what requires a license. Somebody give me a reminder of what the basic rule is for who is required to have a license.
You're doing real estate
other than yourself.
Transaction.
I hear somebody say doing real estate related activities for who?
Somebody other than yourself.
Somebody other than yourself.
And being compensated
And taking payment.
And you're being compensated for. Is that across the board, or are there some exceptions to that rule?
There are exceptions.
There are exceptions, and what's one of the exceptions to that rule?
If you're a W-2 salaried employee of a firm.
W-2 employee of a real estate firm, a real estate broker.
Or a W-2 employee of the owner of the real estate.
Or a W-2 employee of the owner of the real estate. That's another.
Or an attorney doing real estate transactions on behalf of your client as part of
their legal work?
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. That's the 3 exceptions. Perfect. So number 1, I'm a W-2 employee of a real estate firm. That way I can do real estate stuff and I don't have to have a license. Now, remember, I might not be able to do all real estate stuff. There's some limits on that, but I can do real estate stuff and not need a license and still get paid if I'm a W-2 employee of a real estate broker. I can do real estate stuff and get paid for it if I'm a W-2 employee of the owner of the property. And I can do real estate stuff and get paid for it without a license if I'm an attorney and I'm doing legal work for that person. It's selling the real estate, just happens to be part of the legal work. Those are the 3 exceptions. Otherwise, you need a license. So that's kind of the discussion we're picking up, is this whole license rules, license law and rules stuff that we started with. Angelica asked just chapter 8 for tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow will be chapter 8. I don't imagine there'll be anything else for tomorrow. Generally speaking, 7 and 8 take up a full week of the class. So let me share the...
Travis, where are these slides? I missed the first day, so I don't know if you talked about it.
They're in the OneDrive. They're in the OneDrive. And what are they called? Is it just called license law and rules? Is that what they're called?
It's NCREC rules and licenses is what the actual slide is called. Or the
NCREC rules and license law.
Not under, it's under the PowerPoint in the OneDrive?
Yes.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. That's right. I forgot that Sheila joined us a day late. Hopefully not $1 short, but a day late anyway. Right?
$2 short.
$2 short. Some of them are not old enough to know that expression. So let's talk about some additional rules that the Real Estate Commission has. You will need to know for the exam what the different categories are of licensure. We have 2 main types of licenses. If you're a person, you get a broker's license. If you are a company or an entity, that's a word we use a lot, entity. Entity and company just mean the same thing. You don't get a broker's license. What kind of license do you get if you're an entity? What do you think?
Firm.
A firm license, that's exactly right. So if a person wants to practice real estate for others and get paid for it, that person needs a broker's license. If a company or entity wants to practice real estate and get paid for it for others, then that company needs a firm license. Those are the only 2 categories of licenses that we offer. However, within that, we break them out just a little bit. On the personal license side, so licenses for people, we have two main groups of licensees, provisional brokers and non-provisional brokers. And we are going to talk about the differences between provisional brokers and non-provisional brokers. And Seth did link the OneDrive there for you in the chat window. It was awfully nice of it.
I've got it.
Good, good. So let's talk about a provisional broker. You all are studying and taking the class to obtain a provisional broker's license. That is the initial licensure. When a person first obtains a real estate license in North Carolina, they get a provisional broker's license. And they can get that in one of two routes, either by the route you're going as a resident of the state of North Carolina by taking this class and then taking the state exam, or they can obtain a provisional broker's license on the basis of their out-of-state licensure. Don't ask me if your North Carolina license will get you that same treatment in other states. You have to direct that question to whatever other state you might want to be licensed in. So don't ask me if having a real estate license in North Carolina means you can get one in Florida. I don't know. You'd have to ask that question to someone at the Florida Real Estate Commission. What I can tell you is what the North Carolina rule is. And there are two ways to obtain licensure in North Carolina. One is the way you're going right now, which is to take the North Carolina licensing class and the North Carolina licensing exam. The other is to be licensed actively in another state. That is the second route to licensure. For those of you keeping score and paying attention, yes, that means if someone is licensed in another state, if they apply for it here, as long as their license is in good standing, they are automatically issued a North Carolina license. I will be blunt and tell you I vehemently disagree with that rule. I think it is the single dumbest thing ever done by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. And by the way, I just violated North Carolina Real Estate Commission rules by saying that out loud. They actually have a rule that says you can't criticize them. I'm sorry, I don't follow that rule. That's a stupid rule.
What about
Here's my
freedom of
question.
speech?
A huge section of this class is teaching you North Carolina license law and rules, because they say you have to know it to practice real estate in North Carolina. Well, it's hypocritical to say you have to know it to practice real estate in North Carolina, but somebody coming here from North Dakota who has no idea what our license law and rules are is given a license simply because they have one in North Dakota. They're not qualified to practice real estate in North Carolina, and I don't care what anybody says. So feel free to file that complaint if you'd like. I tell it to them every time I see them in person. Dumbest rule in the book. But you need to know it because it might be on the test.
But they don't even have to take the state part
They
of the
don't have to
exam or
take
anything?
anything. All they got to do is pay $100. All they got to do is pay $100. A lot of people have North Carolina and South Carolina who are located in Charlotte, so I assume it's easier to obtain for South Carolina. Well, let's just talk about that. And this is how ridiculous this rule is. Another reason I hate this rule. If you're in Charlotte and you need a North Carolina license and a South Carolina license because you crossed the border, those of us who are licensed in North Carolina, if we wanted to get a South Carolina license, guess what we would have to do?
Take the whole class.
Take their class and their test.
So they get their South Carolina
those who got their
first.
South Carolina license, guess what they have to do?
They just have to pay $100.
Pay $100.
So get your South Carolina first, and then get your North Carolina.
Ain't that some stuff? And by the way, we have the hardest licensing exam in the country.
Great.
It's just stupid.
Yay!
Stupid.
I heard that in Florida, they basically just give them to anybody.
Exactly. They do. They do. Every case of coronavirus in Florida, you also get a real estate license. That's the actual license, I think. I mean, no, seriously, I shouldn't make light of something like that, but it is. And Florida practices a completely different type of, this rule drives me bonkers. It drives me bonkers, and I hate it. I hate it the day they passed it. I have viciously gone after them about this rule, and I will continue to do so. I told them this was awful, and I still tell them it's awful. It's a money grab, plain and simple. All they want is the $100. That's all they want. That's it. In case you just were wondering how I felt about that rule.
Do you actually have to live in North Carolina to get a North Carolina's license? So like if you were on the, like close to the border of like North Carolina
No,
and South Carolina?
what the rule says is if you're a resident of North Carolina, that you generally would have to obtain a North Carolina license first. So that presumably prevents people from going and getting licensed out of state just so they can come through the back door and get licensed here. But, you know, whether that actually functions that way or not, I don't know. But
So could someone from South Carolina get a North Carolina's license without having a South Carolina's license? License?
Yes, we allow out-of-state residents to take our class and so if they didn't have a South Carolina license, but they were a resident of South Carolina, they could take the class in South Carolina in North Carolina and then take the North Carolina exam. We allow that, which is fine with me. I mean, if they're going to take the class and the exam, I don't care where they're coming from. The more the merrier. But I just disagree that people should come in without. You used to have to, years ago, you had to take the whole thing, the class and test, and then it went to just the test, and now it's nothing. And I think that's a mistake. So, but it's the rule, and I got to teach it. I don't have to like it, but I have to teach it. So, other rule, how do you become not provisional? How do you get rid of the provisional status? You get rid of the provisional status by taking post-licensing classes. There are 3 of them for a total of 90 hours. Now, this is the part of the class where I think people's eyes sort of glaze over and they're like, okay, this is what, I don't even know this. Yes, you do. All of these dates, all of these numbers of hours are absolutely key to passing the exam. You will be tested on every single one of these little numbers of hours and dates, and they will throw different numbers in there. Here's the good news. This is just memorization. Anybody can learn this. And so these are the easy questions on the exam, but if you don't memorize this stuff, these are the ones that will sink you. So make sure you memorize it. How many post-licensing classes are there? Total of what?
90 hours within 18 months.
90 hours, but how many classes are there?
3 classes.
3 classes, 30 hours each, for a total of 90 hours. And you must complete them within 18 months after your license is issued. Post-licensing, just FYI, is the only deadline that is tied to your license date. Everything else, everybody shares a deadline. So like we're going to talk about continuing education. That's one deadline for everybody, no matter when you got your license. Renewing your license. It's the same deadline for everybody, no matter when you got your license. Post-licensing of all the dates the real estate commission, that's something probably to put in your notes so you remember. Post-licensing is different. Post-licensing, the deadline for taking it is tied to when you got your license. So if your license was issued July 1 of 2020, you have until June 30th, no, that would be a year. You have until December 31st of 2021 to finish your post-license, because that would be 18 months. Okay, it's based on your license date, the date you got your personal license. As far as rules about post-licensing, there really are not many rules as far as how you can take them. You can take them in any order you want to, even though they're numbered 301, 302, 303. You could take 303 and then take 301 and then take 302 last. They don't force you to take them in a certain order. And the only reason you take post-licensing, and this is a test question for sure, is that you want to maintain what we call active status on your license. Active means you are currently practicing. You are currently engaged in the real estate business. That's what active status means. To be on an active status, you have to have done everything right. We're going to talk about a lot of different things you have to do, like renewing your license, and taking continuing education, and taking post-license. Somebody who's on active status has complied with everything. My license is on active status. That means I've paid the renewal fee, I've taken continuing education, I don't need any post-licensing, everything's up to date. That's what active status means. You might see a test question about what happens to somebody's license who loses or who doesn't take post-licensing, who misses their 18-month deadline. And they will give you a lot of answer choices. They lose their license, they have to start over, they have to take more classes, they have to do this, they have to do that. The only penalty for failing to take the post-licensing within 18 months is that the license goes inactive. Anytime you miss a deadline for classes, your license goes to inactive status. Which means, so what do you think that means about you doing the business? What do you have to do if your license goes from active to inactive? What do you have to stop doing? Practicing real estate. You can't practice real estate while you have an inactive license. And if you went inactive because you did not take post licensing, what do you think you would have to do to get back to active status?
Take the courses.
Take the course. Take the post license. That's exactly right. It's not a punishment. It's just that you've got to catch up on what you missed.
I have a question.
Okay.
I went and looked at some townhouses a few weeks ago, and the rep that was there, I was talking to her, and she said that her license was inactive. So is there like a loophole where she could be like a W-2 employee?
She's probably a W-2 salaried employee of the owner of the property. Who's the owner of the property right now?
Pulte.
And so she's probably a salaried W-2 employee of Pulte Homes.
Okay.
I have a question also.
Yep.
Those 3 classes, the ones that's a total of 90 hours, is there additional tests after that or exams or anything after that, or is it just like hours of the class?
There is a test at the end of each one of them normally. And I say normally because right now, because of the pandemic and because of their concerns about exam security, the Real Estate Commission has waived the requirement to take an exam at the end of the post-licensing classes. So right now, those who are taking post-licensing don't have any exams at the end of those classes. But I will tell you that if you're stressing about an exam at the end of a post-licensing class, you shouldn't be stressing. It's nothing like pre-licensing. We spoon feed you the answers. I mean, I shouldn't say that out loud, but exactly what happens in post-licensing.
Did they just change the rule?
The rule has not been changed. There are temporary measures in effect because of the virus pandemic, and right now.
Oh no, not that rule. I was saying I was watching one of your other videos, and you had said something about post licensing had to be each 30 hours for the first year or something like that. So that's
3 years to finish them. Yes, that rule has changed. Changed
Okay.
July 1. You used to have 3 years to complete them, now you have 18 months. So they cut the time in half. Okay? So if you see an old review and it says 3 years, that's incorrect now. It's 18 months. We all good on this rule? So in order to maintain active status, you have to take the 3 post-licensing courses within 18 months after the time you are licensed. In order to be on active status, a provisional broker must have a broker in charge. They must be affiliated with a broker in charge, and a provisional broker can only be affiliated with one bid, one firm. Now, this is where I want you to start to do some critical thinking, because I could just tell you something, or you could look at this and go, well, wait a minute, that must mean something. Does this slide say all real estate brokers in North Carolina have to have a BIC in order to be on active status? Is that what this slide says?
No.
That's provisional.
It says provisional brokers. Read between the lines, because this is a test question you'll miss because your first response is, yes, they gotta have a BIC. It doesn't say all brokers have to have a BIC to be active. It says provisional brokers do. Read between the lines. What does that tell you about non-provisional brokers?
They don't need one.
They
They
can be
don't
active
need who?
without having a BIC or a
A
firm.
bit.
A non-provisional broker can be active without a BIC.
But they
A
can't
non-provisional
advertise.
broker can be active without a firm. Look at the last statement. It says provisional brokers may only be affiliated with one BIC or one firm. Does it say real estate brokers in North Carolina can only be affiliated with one BIC or one firm? Or does it say provisional brokers can only be affiliated with one BIC?
Provisional brokers.
Provisional brokers.
So read between the lines. What does that mean about non-provisional brokers?
They can be affiliated with more than one bit.
Can be affiliated with more than one BIC, more than one firm.
Or not a BIC at all.
I'm sorry?
Or not a BIC at all. They don't have to have a
Or
BIC.
none at all. That's exactly right. So if somebody were to ask you, well, what's the advantage of getting rid of the provisional status? Could you list off a couple of things right now that would be an advantage of being a non-provisional broker versus a provisional broker?
Yes.
Yeah.
More
I
commission.
don't have to have
A BIC.
BIC or
a
a
BIC,
firm.
or
A firm.
let's say not only, that's not my problem. I don't want to not have a BIC. I want to have a bunch of them. Can I have a bunch of them if I'm non-provisional?
Yes.
Yes. So, like as an example, Seth is a non-provisional broker. I know he looks 12, but he's actually had his license long enough that he's not provisional any longer. And he has, as far as I know, one broker in charge, which happens to be me. Could he, if he wanted to, as a non-provisional broker, hang his license with another firm in a different location as well?
Yes.
Yes.
He could. And he could work on behalf of two different firms at the same time. Now, he would need the permission of both brokers in charge. He can't do that without their knowledge. He can't sort of sneak around and moonlight and all that kind of stuff. He would need their permission. And there are reasons why somebody might want to do that. Let's say, like as an example, my firm, the one he's affiliated with, we do not do residential property management. I have done residential property management. I hate residential property management. I will never do it again if I can help it. I'm good at it, but I don't like doing it. I don't like collecting rent. I don't like yelling at tenants. It's not my thing. I don't like fighting with landlords about what needs to be fixed. So if Seth came to me and said, oh, I want to manage some property, I would say, not here you don't, because I'm not going to supervise you managing property. Well, he has the freedom. Well, of course, he could just leave the firm altogether and find a firm that would allow him to do everything he wants to do. Or could he just stay with our firm and say, okay, well, I'm just going to stay with your firm and do my residential sales with your firm like I've always done, but I'm also going to hang my license with Block and Associates so I can do some property management. Could he do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he could. As a non-provisional broker, that can happen.
Angelica asked if you are affiliated with more than one firm, how does that relate to dual agency? And Candice asked, why would you need or want more than one BIC?
So hopefully I just answered Candace's question about why we would want and need more than one BIC, because not every office is going to do all kinds of real estate. Not every office is going to practice in every area of the state. What if Seth decided that he wanted to also sell property in Charlotte? My firm's not a member of the MLS in Charlotte. I have no reason to be. I don't sell property in Charlotte. And he said, well, I want to, I go to Charlotte twice a week, and so I want to be able to show and sell property up there. Well, he could search if he wanted to and try to find a different firm that's a member of both the Raleigh MLS and the Charlotte MLS, but do you think that's probably going to be rare? Do you think there's probably not that many firms that would have a reason to be a member of both of the MLS in both Raleigh and Charlotte at the same time?
Correct.
Probably not. Probably hard to find. So, better solution, leave his license with my office for the Raleigh area. And when he does business in Charlotte, hang his license with a different firm in Charlotte for the Charlotte business. So those are the kinds of reasons why you might want to have more than one affiliation. Angelica said, if you're affiliated with more than one firm, how does that relate to dual agency? It has no impact whatsoever on dual agency, because dual agency has nothing to do with the broker. What's the definition of dual agency?
The same firm representing both sides.
Same firm represents the buyer and the seller. Because remember, the buyer and the seller hire the firm. So if Seth works for two different firms and the buyer hires one and the seller hires the other, that's not dual agency, because that's two different firms. Dual agency is the buyer and seller have hired the same firm. That's a really good question, Angelica. Terry said, how can you be non-provisional without a BIC if you need to be a BIC to allow to market? Well, we're going to talk about, Terry, in detail what we need a BIC for, because ultimately that's going to become a decision you all have to make one day. At some point soon, you all will have to make a decision about whether or not you need a BIC. When you're provisional, that decision is much easier, because if you want to use your license as a provisional, what's the answer?
You need a BIC.
You need a BIC, because you can't even activate your license until you find a broker in charge as a provisional. But then once you finish those post-licensing classes, and remember, you could finish those just as soon as you get your license. You could finish them in 3 weeks if you wanted, right after you got your license. So could you get your license and 3 weeks later be non-provisional?
Yeah.
You could. If you were, you'd have to make a decision at that point in time of whether or not you wanted to have a broker in charge. Because now you have the choice, because once you're a non-provisional broker, you have the choice of whether or not you have a BIC. You have the choice of whether or not you have more than one BIC. You don't have that choice as a provisional broker. Are we all good on that? And then I'm gonna talk about the why you might make that choice, but I just want to make sure you're good on the different treatment of provisional versus non-provisional. Is everybody okay on that? Why do you think, just as a curiosity, why do you think the Real Estate Commission would have a rule that says provisional brokers can only have one broker in charge? Why do you think that rule is important?
That's who they get their advice from.
They get their advice completely from their broker in charge, right? We would be very concerned that they might get different advice from two different
From different people.
And as a provisional, that's a big concern.
Doesn't that have something to do with like how you're paid too?
Well, it does have to do with how you're paid. When you are a licensee, and this rule applies to everybody. When you have a real estate license and it's on active status, because if it's not on active status, you can't get paid anyway. But assuming your license is on active status, you can be paid. If you are affiliated with a firm, your compensation can only come through your firm. Notice how I started that statement. I said, if you are affiliated with a firm, then your compensation can only flow through a firm. Let me ask you a question. Are there brokers who could be active without being affiliated with a firm?
Yes. Yes.
Who are they?
Non-provisional brokers.
Non-provisional brokers. How would they be compensated if they were non-provisional, they were active, but they didn't have a firm, didn't have a broker in
Directly
charge?
from the client.
Directly from the client. That's exactly right. They would be paid directly. There'd be no middle handling of the money. But if you're affiliated with a firm, like for example, Seth is a non-provisional broker, but you can't pay him directly. Why can you not pay him directly? Even though he's
Associated with the firm.
because he chose to be with a firm. And the minute you choose to be with a firm, you essentially give up all your commissions to your firm, as far as the law is concerned. If he wanted to be paid directly by his clients, he needs to be not affiliated with a broker in charge. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, that was a test question, I think, on the midterm. And I think it was like, if you're a provisional broker, your BIC is the only one that can
Pay,
pay you. Yeah.
which is true, right? Because
So-
Right.
think about a provisional broker.
See this wording. This is where it messes me up. So the BIC and the firm is the same thing.
Essentially, that's exactly right.
All right.
Exactly right. So a provisional broker has to have a BIC, and if you have a BIC, your compensation goes through your BIC. So you put those two together, and there's no way for a provisional broker to be paid other than having a BIC and buy their BIC. Okay.
Travis, can you take those classes at the same time, the post
Post-license,
classes?
you can. There used to be a maximum number of hours that you could take in post-licensing at any given time, but that is not the case anymore. So you can take them however you want to.
Thank you.
Yep.
How much do they cost? How much do they cost, these classes?
About $10,000 each.
That's it?
I'm kidding.
No, they cost like 400 or something.
Well, okay, Seth, whoever said they cost 400, sign her up for one of our post-licensing classes
I think they're
now.
$225.
I tell you what, we will give you the discounted rate of $399 if you want. I can only speak for the best real estate school in North Carolina, but post-licensing courses at the Penn School of Real Estate are $229 each,
Yeah.
or $599 if you pay for all three of them at once. So, and it's pretty consistent. You know, they're right around $200 a piece, you know, across the state for the most part.
Are y'all gonna open up anytime soon, like for like actual class, or is it gonna stay online for a while?
Our plan is to attempt to begin in-person hybrid classes, which would be both in-person and in this format at the same time, probably in October. That's our hope. We still have a 5,000 square foot space sitting empty on Wake Forest Road. And literally, when I say sitting empty, Seth's desk in the lobby still has a sign on it that says the leprechauns made me do it, because he put that up for St. Patrick's Day, and that was the last time any of us were in the building, and I'm not even remotely kidding about that. It is a depressing sight to go in there because it has literally been empty since mid-March. You know, at $11,000 a month in rent, ain't that nice? At some point, we hope to resume in-person classes for those that prefer it, because there are, you know, there's a significant number of people that prefer to be in person and have the interaction. But also, my plan is to have them be hybrid classes. So you could, you know, if you want to come to the class in person, you'd be in the classroom with me, but we would also have this going at the same time and somebody moderating and, you know, making sure that I knew the questions. And so we would do, you know, kind of both settings at the same time. That's the goal anyway. That's what we hope to accomplish. And I think that's the best way for post-licensing, because post-licensing is supposed to be practical. It's a practical application class. Do we have a 7-day wait period between post classes? No, there are no rules now regarding taking post-licensing and how many hours you can take. You can take them as quickly as you'd like. So you can begin them right after you get your license. As a matter of fact, you can start them the day after you pass the license exam, even before you have the license, you can start taking the class. So what is active status? Active status means simply you can get paid. That's on the test. That's exactly what you're looking for. Anytime somebody's being paid, you're looking for active status. That's the only status that allows payment of compensation. Now, look at that second bullet point down here. It says licensees can only be compensated for work that they did when they were on active status. It doesn't say, and this is where the test gets tricky sometimes, it doesn't say the licensee has to be active to be paid. It says they can only be paid for work they did while they were active. So I just want to give you an example of how they might mess with your mind on the test with that rule. Let's say Cassie is a provisional broker, and she's been working with a buyer for the last several months. She's on active status. She has her license home with a broker in charge. and the buyer finally has found a property they like. They make an offer. They go under contract. Cassie's the buyer's agent. It's scheduled to close on August 10th. Cassie's post-licensing deadline, her 18 months, is on August 8th. She forgets to take her last post-licensing course. What will happen to her license on August 9th, first of all? It will go what?
Active.
It will go inactive, right?
We paid.
It will go inactive. Now here's the test question they're going to ask you. And pay special attention to the way I word this. Can Cassie's broker in charge lawfully compensate her for this transaction, which closes on August 10th?
No.
No,
No.
I think so. Yes, up until August 8th, right?
Can up until
Right,
August,
it's for the work that she's done
Yes,
while she
what
was
does the rule
active.
say?
through August
She
8th.
can be compensated for work done when she was what?
Active.
So
Active.
up to August 8th.
Active when she did that work, right?
When she did all that work, she was what?
Active.
She was active. So legally, could she be compensated for that?
Yes.
So she's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
inactive.
Isn't that kind of like when you put in your 2 weeks notice, but you still have to get the paycheck for the time that you did work?
Very similar. Same thought process. That's exactly right. So she could be inactive and still legally paid. Now, I didn't say, will her broker in charge pay her? Because a lot of firms have an internal rule that says, if your license is not active on the day you close, we're not paying you. And the firm is free to have that policy because the real estate commission is not going to enforce how they do their business. But the real estate commission does say it's only legal to pay someone for work they did when they were active. Now, here's what Cassie can't do. Can she go to closing on the morning of the 10th? Can she attend the closing?
Nope.
No, because she's inactive. Does that make sense?
But
So,
what compensation other than the commission, which would occur after the closing, what compensation exists for a broker like that?
that is, but what they're saying here is that compensation is not just for the day of closing. It's compensation for all of the tasks and all of the work that was performed during the brokerage services.
So the BIC would have to calculate the percentage of time that she was active.
That's what they should do. They
Okay.
should say, okay, that she did everything except attend the closing. We think attending the closing is 10% of the total
Okay.
work involved in the transaction, so we're not going to pay her that 10% because she wasn't active during that time. They would have to come up with some, calculation that made sense, but they could compensate her for the transaction. Is everybody okay on that? Because they can really mess with you on a test question or something like that. Now, I'm going to ask the same question, but in reverse.
Can you repeat? I'm sorry. Can you repeat it one more time?
No, because I'm going to ask it in reverse, so it'd be the same exact thing.
Okay.
So Cassie is a provisional broker who forgot to take her post license and her license is on inactive status. She doesn't realize this. She believes her license is active, and she's been out showing property and helping a buyer client with property for the last several months while she was inactive. The buyer makes an offer, we go under contract, scheduled to close on August 10th. On August 3rd, Cassie realizes her mistake, and she scrambles and enrolls in a post-licensing class. She finishes that on August 9th, and the closing takes place on August 10th. Can she be compensated for this transaction?
No, because when she did it, she wasn't.
Most likely not, because most of the work was done when she was what?
Inactive.
Inactive. Does that help, Tasha? It looked like the light went on there for a little bit, Are
Okay.
we? And that, Courtney, is that better? So you can only be paid for work you did while your license is active.
You said most likely not.
Well, what I'm saying, most likely, could the BIC calculate and say, okay, well, she's gonna attend the closing, and the closing was 10% of the total work, so we're gonna pay her 10% of the transaction? They could maybe do something like that, but
Okay, that's
on a test, the answer they'd be looking for is no, she can't be compensated for that. And listen, I've had that come up with referrals before. I had a lady in CE last month taking a continuing education class, and she came to class, and the first thing she said was, how fast can I activate my license after I take this class? Because my license was on inactive status. I didn't take my CE. And I said, well, assuming this is the only class you need, if this is the last one, and she said it is, then you can activate it immediately after class is over. And she said, good, because I've got a transaction that's closing in a couple of days and I'm getting paid a referral fee on. And I said, it's not gonna matter. And she said, what do you mean? I have to be active so I can get paid that referral fee. I said, no, you can't get paid that referral fee at all.
right.
And she said, what do you mean? I said, when did you refer the buyer to the agent that you referred them to? And she said, back in March. I said, so what was the service that you rendered in this transaction? Was the referral, right? You haven't done any work since then. You didn't do any work before that. You didn't do any work after that. The only work you did was the referral in March, when her license was what? Inactive.
Okay.
She can't be paid for it. I don't care if she takes a class now. She can't be paid for that one. She can be paid for future ones, but not that one. So the moral of that story is keep your license what? Active, because you never know when you're going to need it. You never know. Wouldn't it be a sickening feeling if you had a license, you had it on inactive status, and somebody walked up to you like your best friend and said, hey, you got a real estate license, don't you, Joy? And Joy says, well, I do, but I don't really practice it. And the friend says, well, do you know anybody who could help me sell my house? You know, the $2 million house I have down the street. Do you know anybody who could help me sell that? Because I would really love for you to hook me up with somebody. How stupid would Joy feel if she was sitting there with her license on inactive status?
Extremely.
Dumb.
Stupid.
Really dumb. Right. If you're going to go through all of it, here's my recommendation. If you're going to put yourself through all this torture, and it is torture, and you're going to do all this work, and you're going to pass this exam, go ahead and knock out your post-licensing so you can activate your license. You can decide if you want a BIC or whatever once you get down the road, but knock out the post-licensing so you can activate your license. So at bare minimum, if a referral comes along, you can take advantage of it. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah. But see, you could pay for all of this. You could pay for all the classes, all the time you spent with one referral fee. And quick too. I mean, I just got a referral fee in the mail the other day for $2,100. You know what I did? You know how much work I did for that $2,100? I made a phone call. 3 months ago, I made a phone call.
But you can't get a referral fee if you're a provisional broker?
You can, as long as your license is on active status. But remember, the only way to be active as a provisional is to actually go find a broker in charge. So what I'm saying is, get active as quickly as you can, no matter what. And usually, for most people, the quickest route to that is just get rid of the post license. Just do it, knock it out of the way.
Be done with it.
Be done with it. Get it over with. Okay?
Travis, do most BICs, would they prefer that you have the post license classes behind you before?
Well, let me tell you how I'll answer your question with a question, and then you tell me what you think. BICs are held 100% responsible for any mistakes made by provisional brokers under their supervision. BICs are generally not held nearly as responsible for mistakes made by non-provisional brokers under their supervision. So which do you think a BIC would prefer?
Non-provisional.
Non-provisionals. And I'm going to tell you what you're going to experience as the reality. When you get out there, a lot of firms, in order to push you to get rid of that provisional status, they will pay you a much worse commission split while you're provisional than when you're non-provisional, because they want to push you to get rid of it because they don't want to be responsible for you as a provisional broker. That's what you're likely to find.
So if they know that we're new to real estate, will the BIC guide us?
I would love to say the answer to that is yes. They certainly should. What I will say is that some are much better than others. So be careful about what firm you join and who you hang your license with and how willing they are to ask those kinds of questions. How involved are you? How willing are you to answer questions? Are you going to be there when I need you? All those things.
Okay, thank you.
Do they ever cover the cost of the training?
The post-licensing courses, I've not seen any that do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not seen any that do. Does the license indicate provisional or non-provisional? It does. The license card shows your license status. As an example, and I can show you mine here. As an example for what you would see on, I have to share the screen though. Share and this one right here. Okay. If you want to see what the license looks like, you can go to ncrec.gov. You can't because you don't have a license, but on ncrec.gov, oops, wrong one. If I click on licensing and then licensee login, if I log in to my license record, I can look at my license. Oops. And right here, and so the question was, does the license indicate provisional or non-provisional? Right, see right there where it says type?
Mhm.
The B just means broker. If I were provisional, it would say PB.
Cool.
So yep, the license card does indicate your particular status. And the number also tells everybody how old you are, by the way. Just get used to it. Because your license number, they're sequential in order. So you can always tell roughly how long somebody's had a license by looking at their license number. I think now what are they at, Seth? What's the highest number?
3,232.
320,000, something like that. Yeah, so I'm 249,000 and they're
I'm
up to
298,000.
yeah, so Seth's like 50,000 behind me, and now they're up to like 70,000 behind me. Yeah, I've had that one.
What happens after the expiration date on 2021?
What happens
Just
after
renew
the
it?
expiration date? I pay some money, and I renew it,
How much money?
and then I get a new one.
$100.
How much money? I bet that shows up on the license test. What do you want to bet? We're gonna talk about that. $45.
Oh, that's not bad.
$45 for renew.
A year, right?
That's just
For a
to renew
year.
the license though, but that doesn't include like the MLS stuff,
It
right?
doesn't include anything else that might help you do the business. That's just the fees associated with renewing your license with the real estate commission.
So would you be, or would a broker be inactive if they didn't renew their license?
A broker would be expired if they don't renew. And we're actually going to talk about that right now. Let's talk about what it takes to be active and what the different license statuses are. It's almost like y'all ask questions that are right on the next slide. That's right. So every license, provisional license, non-provisional license, firm licenses, school licenses, every license that the North Carolina Real Estate Commission offers expires on June 30th of every year. They all expire on June 30th. That will show up on the test. If you fail to renew, your license status is called expired. You need to know that. That is very different from inactive. They like to confuse the two on the test. They expect you to know the difference. Inactive could be for a number of reasons. You didn't take a class. You're a provisional broker, but you don't have a BIC. You could just choose to be inactive. You could be inactive for a number of reasons. You're only expired for one reason. What is the one reason? You did not what?
You didn't pay your renewal fee.
You did not pay your renewal fee. And it says there how much the renewal fee is. You'll need to know that amount. How much is it?
$45.
$45, and you will also need to know the renewal period. You cannot pay it before May 15th, and you cannot pay it after June 30th. So you have to pay it by June 30th. So sometime between May 15th and June 30th, every year, you get to spend $45 to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Let me
If you pay it at the end of May, the next year, will it be expired if you don't pay it by then, or does it still extend to June 30th?
It's always till June 30th. They all expire on June 30th. So when it's not a year from when you renew it, it's you renew between May 15th and June 30th, and it's good until the following June 30th. And that's true for everybody.
No matter when we end up getting our license next May 15th to June 30th,
That's right. What if you pass the exam on June 28th? What do you have to do by June 30th?
Pay $45.
You got to renew your license. They don't care when you got it. You got to renew by June 30th. Okay? Everybody renews every year by June 30th. Okay? And Terry brings up a good point in the chat, Christina too. This is the most important $45 for the rest of your life, because there are only two ways that you could end up back in this class if you get a real estate license. Either you had a disciplinary action where the real estate commission revoked your license and you decided you wanted to come back and try again, or you didn't pay the $45. Wouldn't it be sad if you spent all this money and all this time and all this effort and you lost the license because you didn't pay $45 a year? Pay the $45. Even if you're not using the license, pay it. Just pay it. You'll never lose it. You might not be on active status, and that's okay. You might not take your post license. You might not take your CE. You can always come back and make that stuff up. What you can't make up is renewing. Renew. Pay the renewal fee. Okay, that's the most important $45 for sure. No doubt about it.
I have a quick question.
All right.
If you own a real estate license,
You underwater, Terry, all of a sudden. I heard I have a quick question and nothing else.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
If you own a real estate license in Florida and you own one in North Carolina and you go expire in North Carolina, do you just have to pay the $100 to come back to North Carolina?
No, they will not let you essentially use the rule against them in that way. If you allowed your North Carolina license to expire and then you come back through and you try to get licensure via another state, they'll say, no, you got to retake our class. So they don't allow that loophole. All right. Current is simply the opposite of expired. If you see that on the test, current just means, if expired means I didn't pay the $45 by June 30th, what does current mean?
Today.
You did pay it.
I did pay it. Notice current and active are not the same thing. Current and active are two different things. Could I be current but inactive? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes. Meaning I paid the $45, but I haven't done something else that I was supposed to do. And so that's fine. You can be current, inactive, but just make sure you're current. If the renewal fee is paid late, there's a period of time where you can just pay a reinstatement fee. If you are expired, you need to know this down here at the bottom. Licenses expired for more than 2 years lose their license and have to start over again, pre-license. So how much did they save? How much did they not pay? They've been expired 2 years. How much did they not pay?
$45.
twice, right?
90.
So for $90, they got to do all this over again. Ain't that sad?
Yes.
That's brutal. That's brutal. Don't put yourself in that.
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't do it.
Okay. So let's talk about how do we get to active. What do we need to do to stay to active? Obviously, you need to renew. You can't be active and expire. So you have to renew. You have to be up to date on your education requirements. We already talked about post-licensing. Provisional brokers need to take post-licensing. How many classes?
3.
3 classes, 30 hours.
30 hours each. How long do you have to take them?
18 months.
18 months since you get your license.
18 months after you get your license. Now, this next one we have not talked about yet. This is the next education requirement. And this is not just for provisional brokers. This is for all of us. Every year, all licensees have to take 8 hours of continuing education in order to maintain their license on active status. Now, I'm going to point out, all the wording is very careful in this section. I didn't say they have to take CE to keep their license. What's the only thing necessary to keep your license?
To renew it.
To pay
Pay
$45.
the renewal fee. They have to take 8 hours of CE if they want to keep active status on their license. This deadline is also the same for everybody. It's June 10th. The deadline for taking continuing education is June 10th each year. So by June 10th, everybody in North Carolina who's on active status and wants to stay on active status has to take a 4-hour update course and a 4-hour elective course of their choosing before June 10th. If they don't, their license will go what status you think?
Inactive.
Inactive.
Travis, I have a question.
Okay, Ethan.
So every year we go on a cruise because my sister does her continuing education on the cruise, I guess for a tax write-off. So it doesn't, for my first question, it doesn't have to be in North Carolina to do the continuing education, right?
It has to be approved by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, but it doesn't have to be taught physically in North Carolina.
Okay, so there would be no purpose for me. So we're going on one in March. So there would be no purpose of me doing continuing education in March, right?
There will not, because one of the things we're going to talk about is that new licensees get their first year of CE off. You get to take your first CE year off as a brand new license. Because if you think about it, what's the purpose of continuing education? To update you on new stuff, right? Well, you just got your license. You don't know any of the old stuff. Everything you know is new stuff. So you don't need an update. So so just let's play with the dates here. You all will be getting your license in August, September of 2020. Do any of you need continuing education by June 10th of 2021?
No.
You do not. You all will need continuing education by June 10th of 2022 because you get your first cycle off and then every year after that. So starting in 2022, you'll need to start taking, and they will ask a test question about that, by the way, about the year off. Here's what's crazy about that. It's not necessarily a year off. It will be for you people because we're pretty close to June. We just finished the CE cycle. What if you got your license on June 6th? When would your free year of not taking CE be?
You'd have to take it.
4 days after.
It'd be 4 days. It'd be June 6th, June 10th. It doesn't matter when you got your license, you get to skip June 10th. So if I was y'all, Or if I was anybody who was trying to take the license exam in June, I'd wait till the 11th. So you're not getting me. You're not messing me up on this stuff. I'm not going to give away my free year of CE. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay.
Yes. Does this mean just 2 classes, Travis?
I'm sorry?
Does this just mean 2 classes?
Correct. Just the first year's requirements, that first 8 hours with 2 classes that you have to take, update and elective, which is an annual requirement for everybody. The first year of it, the first license year of it is waived for everybody. And even the bigger answer to your question is, if you can find a reason to go on a cruise, go on it in a more normal time, assuming the world has come back to normal, hopefully by March. Y'all, if we still locked in here in March, I'm gonna be a crazy person. I'm gonna be like, I can't.
You won't be alone.
I can't.
Well, that'll be
like
level 13 of Jumanji at that point. So
yeah, right. I mean, seriously, I'm following the rules and I'm being good and I'm not going out and social distancing and wearing masks and I'm really doing everything I can. But I'm a people person. This is killing me. Like seriously, I need people. I can't make it another year of this.
Travis, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so like with my cosmetology license, we get like an email update on that kind of stuff. So once we get our license for this, will we get like, since we're already in the system, will we get emails like, okay, it's time for your,
You will.
okay.
You will. They will email you. But right now, this is ultra important because they will test you on all these little dates.
Right.
Yeah, but yes, they will. In the real world, it's very hard to miss these deadlines because they will remind you. They'll send you out emails. Hey, we don't have a record of you taking your continuing education. You need to do that by June 10th. Yada yada yada.
Thank you.
And also, obnoxious people who own real estate schools like me will send you emails and say, "Hey, you haven't taken your CE yet. Why don't you come see us?"
We're thankful for that. At least I am.
All right, and the last step to being active is if you're a provisional broker, you have to find a broker in charge, whereas a non-provisional broker could just declare themselves as active. The non-provisionals, remember, don't need a BIC necessarily just to be active. And the next slide talks about the fact that provisional brokers don't need continuing education by their first June 10th. It is by the second June 10th that they have a license. So whatever the test question gives you, just look at the date they got their license, skip June 10th once, and the second June 10th you land on, that's when their CE deadline is. So just as a quick test, somebody gets their license on November 15th of 2020. When is their CE deadline?
June 10th of 2022.
2022.
June 10th of 20 what?
22.
Somebody gets their license on January 12th of 2022. When's their CE deadline?
June 10th of 2023.
June 10th of 2023, right? Because June 10th of 2022 would be the first one, and June 10th of 2023 would be the second when they have the deadline. So it's always the second June 10th that somebody has a license. It's when their CE requirement kicks in, and every June 10th after that, in order to maintain active status. So if you don't take your CE again by June 10th, what status does your license go to?
Inactive.
Inactive. All right. So look at this. It says, Shanika is a provisional broker, obtained her North Carolina real estate license on September 12, 2018, and is affiliated with a broker in charge at Next Level Real Estate. She has completed post-licensing courses 301 and 303, but has yet to begin post-licensing course 302. When is the last possible time she can complete 8 hours of continuing education in order to maintain her active license status? There's a lot going on here in this question that you need to unpack. Number one, and first and foremost, what does post-licensing have to do with CE?
Nothing.
Nothing. So really, these are two separate questions, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
So these are two separate questions. Number one, when does she need to take CE? But number two, when does she need to finish that post licensing? So let's check the post licensing first. Her license was issued on September 12th of 2018. And she has how long to take all three post licensing courses?
18 months.
months.
At the
18
point though,
months.
she had three years, didn't she? Or is that besides the point?
They're not grandfathered in. The rule now is the rule, 18 months.
Okay.
Okay. So, she was issued her license September 12th of 2018. Well, September 12th of 2019 would have been 12 months, right?
Mhm.
We need 6 more months.
March of
October, November, December,
March
January,
2020.
February, March. March 12th of 2020 to me seems to be 18 months. Does that sound about right to y'all?
Yes.
Does she have a CE problem or a post-licensing problem or maybe both? We know one she's got, right? She has a post-licensing problem, correct?
Yes.
So she has to finish that post-licensing course 302 before she can activate her license. That's the first part of the answer. The second part, when's the last possible time she can complete 8 hours of continuing education in order to maintain her active status? Well, her CE deadline is June 10th, just like everybody else's. She got her
2020.
license in 2018, September of 2018. So did she need CE by June 10th of 2019?
No.
It'll
No.
be 2020.
She needed CE by June 10th of what?
2020.
2020. So right now, she has two problems, does she not? She's short a post-licensing class and she's short 8 hours of CE. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So can she start the CE before she finishes a post licensing?
She can. She can take them in any order she wants to.
Okay.
Yeah, she can sign up and take them in any order she wants to. But she's not going to get that license back active until she takes both.
So I have a question. Do you no longer have to, and I don't know if you haven't got to it yet, but do you no longer have to have the years behind your provisional license before you can be non-provisional, or is it now just the post-licensing courses?
It's always been just the post-licensing course. You have always been non-provisional the minute you finish the post-licensing courses.
So what does the 2 years come in, or is it just
that's the broker in charge rule?
Okay.
That's if you want to become a broker in charge. That has nothing to do with just getting rid of the provisional status.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought that's where you might be going with that, but I want to make sure. That's the broker in charge qualification rule. Okay? Which we're going to talk about for sure. Are we all good so far on the deadlines and licenses? We all good on that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. We already talked about that slide. I don't know why it's in there twice. So let's look at these questions. Patricia, the provisional broker, takes a listing for her firm, New Heights Real Estate, on May 15th. The property goes under contract and closes on July 2nd. Patricia forgets to take her required CE and her license falls inactive as of July 1. Can she be paid? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
She can. Does she have to be?
No.
No.
No, but she could. Now, she can't be paid for work she did on
July
July 1 or 2, but she could be paid for the work she did before that. Good, good. So here's a big question we need to sort of ponder. And why don't we do this? Why don't we take let's take a quick restroom break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the broker in charge rule and who needs a BIC and who can be a BIC and all that sort of thing. So it's 3:05, let's say 3:10, a little after 3:10, 3:12, something like that. Just take a couple minutes into the bathroom. All right, so picking back up where we left off here, we want to ask this question, do we need a broker in charge? Is that something that we need in our life? Now, of course, the answer to that, if we are a provisional broker, is what? What's the answer to that question?
Definitely.
Yes.
Absolutely. No doubt about it, because provisional broker can't be active without a broker in charge. But if I'm a non-provisional broker, I have to choose. I have to decide if I'm going to affiliate with a firm or not. And now, there are reasons why I might want to. There are reasons why I might not want to. What do you think is maybe the number one reason why I wouldn't want to affiliate with a firm or a broker in charge? Just be selfish for a minute. What do you think is the number one reason?
More money.
More money.
Commission.
More money for yourself.
If I'm not affiliated with a firm, there's nobody to split the money with. Does that make sense for everybody? That every dime of commission I earn is mine because there's no firm to split it with, no bit to take a piece out of it. So that's the obvious draw of not having a bid. Now, there is a big downside to not having a bid. So we're going to talk about what a bid does that would trigger you to say, okay, I want to do that, so I have to have a bid. Here are the things that you need a bid for. Do you want to affiliate any other people with you in any way? Do you want to work together with other licensees? Do you want to have an employee? Do you want to have an assistant? Do you want to do any of those things? If the answer is yes, then you must have a broker in charge. You cannot affiliate or have anybody else working with you in a real estate setting if you don't have a broker in charge. Is everybody okay with that rule?
Even if they're not an actual licensee.
Correct. You can't have an unlicensed employee, a W-2, that whole thing where I can hire an unlicensed employee as a real estate broker. I can only do that if I have a bid. I don't have the ability to have an assistant if I don't have a broker in charge. Is everybody with me on that? Now keep in mind, and I want to point something out. Maybe it's better to answer this question or make this statement by asking you a question. Who do you think my broker in charge is?
Yourself?
Me.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that there's always the option of being your own broker in charge. When I say you have to have a bid, that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be somebody other than yourself. It just means when you look at your license on that line where it says broker in charge, there better be somebody's name on there if you want to have an unlicensed assistant, or you want to affiliate other people with you, or you want to work together with other agents. In other words, if you're going to be active with no bid, you got to be a one-person show, completely by yourself. Is everybody with me on that? That's the first requirement. Second thing that would trigger automatically needing a broker in charge is you want to hold trust monies. You want to keep money for your clients. You want to keep their funds safe for them. Now, in sales transactions, it's possible to operate without a trust account because you could have somebody else do it. You could have the other firm hold the money. You could have the closing attorney hold the money. So you could probably get away with a sales transaction without holding money. So you might be able to escape having a bid if you don't hold people's money. But let me ask you this question. If you were doing property management,
You can't.
is it possible to do property management without a trust account?
No.
No, because as soon as you collect rent, where do you have to put it?
In a trust account?
In a trust account. If you hold tenant security deposits, where do you think they have to be held?
In a trust account.
In a trust account. So it would almost be impossible to do property management if you didn't have a broker in charge. Does that sort of make sense for everybody? That's not an actual rule. There's no rule that says to do property management, you have to have a broker in charge, but this rule that says you have to have a trust account, you have to have a BIC, pretty much means that all property managers have a broker in charge. The whopper though, the big one, if you haven't already noticed it, this is the one you should be paying attention to. If you want to advertise your services as a real estate broker in any way at all, you need a broker in charge. Because, and the reason for that is, our advertising rule, the first line of it says, all advertising must be approved by, who do you think?
The
Broker
BIC.
in
The
charge.
broker in charge. There is no possible way you can advertise as a real estate broker unless you have a broker in charge to approve that advertising. I mean, notice it says advertising anyway, right? It doesn't say like take out a billboard, it says in any way. This is the big rule. This is the one that, this is the reason that most people, this is why most people, when I say to them, well, you know, you don't have to have a BIC, they're like, I've never heard of such a thing. I've never heard of a real estate agent that doesn't have a BIC. The reason the vast majority of us have a broker in charge is this rule right here. Because look at the first thing that's on that list as an example of advertising.
Business card.
Just a business card is considered a form of advertising. So here's the question. Can a non-provisional broker be active without a broker in charge?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
A provisional broker?
A non-provisional broker.
Okay.
Can a non-provisional broker be active without a broker in charge? What's the answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can they have a business card that says they're a real estate broker?
No.
No.
No, not without a BIC. Can they have a website?
No.
No. Can they even put on the bottom of their emails, licensed real estate agent?
No.
No.
That's a form of
What about
advertising.
What about the sign that you put on in front of?
That's a
How-
form of advertising. Putting a sign.
You can't do that either.
So would that be like more beneficial if you were doing it more like part-time, just for like friends and family? So that way it's more like word of mouth?
It would have to be word of mouth. And even then, you would still be very limited in what you could do. Because as Sarah asked, could I put a sign in front of the house? And what's the answer?
No.
No.
No, because that's a form of advertising.
I gotta.
Go ahead, Joy.
So, all in all, I mean, like, why do they put so many stipulations on? It's almost like they're trying to make it hard, basically, for you to be independent. Like they
That's
want
exactly
you.
what they're trying to do. It's exactly what they're trying to do. Because the way they view this is BICs are held to a higher standard. And so we don't want a bunch of independent people who might not understand rules like the advertising rule, like what's required in an advertisement, what's allowed in an advertisement, what's not allowed in an advertisement. So this, for whatever reason, is where they chose to draw the line in the sand. They said, if you want to advertise, you need to have a broker in charge. Now keep in mind, that could be who? Assuming you met the qualifications.
Yourself.
It could be yourself. So the vast majority of agents who want to be independent just need to declare themselves their own what?
Broker in charge.
I am my own broker in charge, assuming they meet the requirements. So does that mean you think at some point along the way we're probably going to study a rule that tells you what it takes to be qualified to be a broker in charge?
Yes.
Yeah, that rule's coming at some point. We're going to talk about what are the requirements. Ethan said this seems stupid. I agree. But they had to draw the line somewhere. And this is just where they chose to draw the line, at advertising.
I have a
They chose to draw
question.
the line at advertising.
With the membership and the realtor and the MLS, how could they control that? That's just like.
What do you mean, how can they control the membership in the...
I understand that everyone can have a membership if you're not active, but why do you need a BIC to even have a membership if you are active?
It's advertising.
Because membership in an
As
MLS,
long as they're not advertising, how is that advertising?
you are advertising.
But
Just
you're-
by being a member of an MLS, you're advertising because the local MLS publishes a list of their members and says these are
Okay.
realtors.
Okay.
And so that's a form of marketing, that's a form of advertising to the public. And so they say that's an advertising.
I understand.
Now, does that mean there are some very limited transactions that somebody could engage in if their license was active and they didn't have a BIC? There are transactions. So let me give you an example. Let's say Sheila's best friend, who we talked about yesterday, who wanted to buy a house, comes to Sheila and says, Sheila, didn't you take a real estate class? I think I remember you taking a real estate class. And Sheila says, yeah, I did. I got my license. And the friend says, well, listen, I'm thinking about buying a house. Would you represent me? Could Sheila do that? Could Sheila be a buyer's agent for that friend as long as she was non-provisional and active without having a broker in charge? Could she do that?
Yes.
She could. Because she didn't have to advertise to get that business. She didn't go out looking for the business. She didn't tell the public, hey, I have a real estate license. It literally fell into her lap. And so therefore she could do it. Does that make sense for everybody? Go ahead, Shrisha.
If you're a non-provisional broker, can you operate with a firm that is having a BIC? And also, can you do some transactions without a BIC individually?
No. Once you make a decision to have a BIC, remember I said earlier, if you have a firm, all of your compensation goes through the firm, period. So this is an all or nothing decision. You can't choose to be with a BIC for some transactions and without a BIC for others. Now, what you could choose to do is be associated with two different BICs and have different transactions flow in different directions that way. But you can't be with a BIC for some transactions and not with a BIC for others at the same time.
I can have a BIC I can have multiple BICs in the same area.
If the brokers in charge are willing to do that, sure. The real estate commission has no rules about that.
Okay.
This is the tough one, advertising. This is why most people have a BIC. This is why most people need a BIC. Could somebody just do referrals without having a broker in charge?
Yes.
Assuming they didn't have business cards and all that stuff, and they just basically just sat back and waited for people to come to them, could they do referrals and get paid referral fees without having a broker in charge? What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what the vast majority of these people do. Most people who are active without a BIC, that's what they're doing. That's
So
what
they basically just advertise, well, they don't advertise, but they let people know, hey, I have a real estate license.
They don't even do that.
Or how do, like, what do they do
They don't
to
do
sit there and
anything.
get referrals?
It comes to them.
That's crazy. Okay.
Because if they're going to reach out to people and say, hey, I have a real estate license, the real estate license says
It's
that's
technically
what?
advertising, yeah.
That's advertising. But see, here's what the thing is. You're only looking at it from your perspective as somebody brand new with a real estate license. Because the first thing you want to do is be shot out of a canyon. I got a license! There are people who have had real estate licenses for 50 years who want to retire. They don't want to do this anymore. But they don't want to give up all the money because they still want to be able to do what?
Refer.
Refer. And if you've been in the business for 50 years, how many people are still going to call you when they get ready to sell their house? A bunch.
Anyone who's still alive.
Anybody who you worked with during all that time. And you could sit back, not even have a broker in charge, not have anybody to supervise you. And every time the phone rings, say, hey, well, no, yeah, I did retire, but you know what? I've got a lovely agent over at Keller Williams who has been taking care of all my clients. She's amazing. I'll give her your phone number and pump those referrals out. I had an 83-year-old lady in CE last year. She made $127,000 in referral fees.
Wow.
She didn't show her house. She didn't open a door. She didn't advertise a thing. But she's been in the business for 40-some years, and she's retired now. That's why this exists. And that's why you're going to keep paying the $45 and keep taking your CE every year so you can keep your license active.
So this is completely off topic, but it kind of brings in with that $45. Like over break, I'm sitting here figuring up like how much it costs like per year. And I'm like, holy moly. Like you better put back some of your commission check in order to cover all of this stuff because it's expensive. Like it's really, really expensive because you have your MLS, then you have your CEs. And before you have your CEs, when you finish your like what we're doing, you've got your post license, and then you have your $45, which that's nothing, but still, like, holy cow. And then you have like advertising stuff if your firm makes you pay for like the different things of like your photographer and all of that thing. Like, Travis, like, how are you supposed to do all this whenever you just starting out?
It's expensive.
It's really expensive too to take the test and the criminal background check.
It is. It's an expensive business to
And
get
then
into.
it's $160, I think, for every test you fail and retake.
But
Yeah.
if you outweigh the cost with a 4-year degree, I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper.
It will be cheaper than that for sure.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, it's an investment. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
I can tell you.
So, if you want to do any of those things, advertise, affiliate somebody with your business in some way, or hold trust monies, if you want to do any of those things, then you need to be affiliated with a BIC. Once you're affiliated with a BIC, you're allowed to practice any type of real estate, that your BIC allows. At that point in time, the real estate commission is not going to limit you. Once you're affiliated with a BIC, the answer from the real estate commission of what you can do is anything related to a real estate transaction. Your BIC may have a different version of that. Like, as I said, I don't allow property management in my firm because I don't want to deal with it. That's always up to the broker in charge. But it's also because the broker in charge is supposed to be responsible for all that. It's not fair to a BIC to say, well, you have to supervise this type of activity. So they get to choose what they get to supervise. Angelica said, when we start with a provisional license, what exactly will our job duties be? Well, that depends on what area of real estate you go into. First of all, don't call it a job. It ain't one of those. It's a business. And so largely what you do with it will be what you make of it. And so it will be always about what you can do to network with people, grow your network with people, learn from the people in your office that can teach you how to network. It is a huge learning curve, especially if you've never been in a sales-based environment where your, compensation was completely based on your production. Yeah, you can spend a lot of money on leads, and insurance as well as real estate for sure, if you're purchasing leads. But remember, there are old-fashioned ways that don't cost nearly as much. You take your time, but not your money necessarily.
Duties would be just like non-provisional brokers. The difference will be is that we need a BIC to.
That's it.
That's
exactly
the only
right.
difference.
That's the only difference. You're not going to have nobody in your firm is going to treat you differently because you're provisional versus non-provisional. Everybody's there to generate business.
You can take listings on your own. You just have to take advice from your BIC and run everything.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. This is a rule you are very likely to see tested. It is a new-ish rule. It's only been around for a little over a year. And so my guess is it's probably filtered its way into the license exam by now. It says all transaction-related documents signed by a client or a customer. So anything anybody signs have to be turned into your broker in charge no later than, how long do you have to do this?
3 days.
3 days.
3 days. Is it 3 banking days?
No, calendar.
3 calendar days. Including holidays, calendar days. So, as an example, the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure. Let's say on Sunday, Brittany held an open house. And Michelle came to the open house, and Brittany presented her with the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, and Michelle signed it, signed the acknowledgement, and that was it. Michelle said, no, I'm not really interested in the property and I already have an agent. But Brittany's got a signed Working with Real Estate Agents brochure. Is that a document that has to be turned over to Brittany's broker in charge? What do you think?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And how long
Yes.
does Brittany have to get that to her broker in charge?
3
3
days.
days.
3
Wednesday.
calendar days. So if the open house is on Sunday, Monday's day 1, Tuesday's day 2, that's today. So she would have to turn that over to her broker in charge by tomorrow.
So if the broker in charge holds on to these, how do you keep proof of who you've gotten to sign as a broker?
I would suggest you give them a copy or give them a digital version of it. I would not suggest you necessarily give them the original.
Oh, so we could scan it and send it to them and keep the original.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. You could even have it. Here's the truth. Most of you are not going to have paper copies of these anyway. Most of you are going to send them out. I have the Working with Real Estate Agents set up to send out as for digital signatures. So when I meet with somebody, I explain to them, hey, I represent whoever, yada, yada, yada. Please don't tell me anything you wouldn't want them to know. And then I say, hey, can I grab your email address so I can send you this brochure? And when I send them the brochure, it has the ability for them to sign it right there electronically. So I don't even have a paper copy. It's all electronic.
You share that version?
Oh, well, you can get it. All you got to do is subscribe to Zip Forms or
I was about to say,
DocuSign or
you can have
.loop.
it through
I have a
DocuSign.
question.
Yep.
So, I said I used to work in a firm, so in a firm, original documents, that's it. If you mess up the original document, you're pretty much screwed.
In a law office, that is not the case in a real
Not
estate.
here.
No.
So, like, let's say you get a signed and notarized copy, you can just get it over again. It's not a
If we're handling something that needs to be notarized, that's a little different. But we very rarely handle documents that need to be notarized. Most all of our documents just require signatures.
Okay.
In which case, scanned and digitized signatures work just fine.
Okay.
Yeah. We very rarely deal with notarized documents. Usually,
I got lost
attorneys
my
handle
job
it.
before because of original documents.
Yeah. And that's a big deal in an attorney's office, the original documents for sure. All right. So here's a question to think about. John is a licensed non-provisional broker who's not affiliated with a broker in charge, nor has he declared himself a sole proprietor broker in charge. His best friend Amy approaches him with a desire to sell her home and asks John to help. What can John legally do for Amy? So let's talk about that thing. What do you think John can do? So he's licensed. He is not affiliated with a BIC. He's active. What can he do for her?
Right.
He can help her.
He can do a sales contract,
Advertise.
but can't do any advertising.
He can do everything for her but advertising. So he could say, well, Amy, I could sell your house for you. I just didn't advertise it. Is that right? That's pretty much it, right?
Well, how
He can refer her to someone else.
He could refer her to somebody else. That'd probably be his best course of action at that point in time. I think it would be really hard to represent a seller. Now, legally, could he represent the seller? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really hard to represent a seller without advertising. What do y'all think?
Yeah.
And without being a member of the realtor.
Well, again, that's advertising, right? Could it be MLS, all that stuff. And so
The boxes.
I think it would be almost impossible to market somebody's property without advertising. So I think that he could and probably should refer it. He could list it for sale, but he couldn't advertise it. And that's not going to work.
But
Could she advertise it?
I'm sorry?
Could Amy advertise her own? Like, could she
Her own
list
advertising.
it
Maybe she
and
just says to
advertise?
John, maybe she just says to John, listen, I just want your advice. I just want you to be there to help me through the contract process, to give me advice, tell me what you think I should do, but I'll do the advertising. I'm gonna put it up for sale by owner. That could legally work, but most likely this is gonna be a referral.
And he or she would need to have their own lawyer to draft the contract, since that's something the Realtors or Association provide brokers
Well,
with?
right. What contract they would use would be.
I'm
in
talking about
question.
the offer to sell contract.
Well, it's a good question, Sarah, but from a practical standpoint, it's hard to answer your question because we don't know who the buyer is going to be. If the buyer comes along and they're represented by a realtor, we're probably still going to be end up using the realtor forms because you still have a realtor involved in the transaction.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, okay. And we said that John could definitely refer to somebody else. That can definitely happen. All right, look at this question. It says Samuel is a non-provisional broker whose license is on active status, though he's not affiliated with a broker in charge, including himself. He's only paid referral fees. So far, so good. As he refers all real estate activities to other brokers in the state. He maintains a public website named sellerdu.com, where people can ask for information about the value of their home, and Samuel refers all of these questions to other active brokers. So here's my question for you. Is his website within the North Carolina Real Estate Commission rules? What do you think?
No.
No.
Oh.
It's a
It is
real
not.
estate website.
That is a form of what?
Advertising.
That is clearly a form of advertising, and in order to do that, what does Samuel need?
Yes.
We're gonna have an active license and he should be.
He needs a broker in charge, or needs to be his own broker in charge. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about today, and then I will leave you with your quiz for Chapter 7, is what can a licensed person who hires an assistant, what can they expect their assistant to do for them? Now, of course, if they hire an assistant who's licensed, then the assistant can do anything. That's not a big deal. But what if they hire somebody who doesn't have a license? Remember, that's one of those exemptions we talked about, how a real estate agent or broker could hire somebody as a salaried W-2 employee, and they are exempt from needing a real estate license. Does everybody remember that?
Yep.
But we did say that person couldn't do everything. There were some limitations on what they could do. You are very likely to get a test question about these salaried assistants of real estate agents and what they're allowed to do versus what they're not allowed to do. They can take phone calls. They can take messages. They can answer the phone. That clearly they can do that. This is one that people get wrong on the test. Can an unlicensed assistant put something in the MLS for sale? What's your answer?
Yes.
No.
Why? Or how? I'm sorry.
Can an unlicensed assistant put something in the MLS for sale? Yes.
It's advertising.
As long as they get every bit of information from who?
The
broker in charge.
From either the broker in charge or the broker who has what? Who hired them?
Hired them.
It's not, that is simply clerical work. It's just clerical work to put something in the MLS. What they can't do is create the listing. They can't create the language. They can't write it and say, beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. They can't do that. But if their broker who employs them hands them and says, here, type this into the MLS, can they do it?
Yes.
Yeah, they can do that. They can do like public record searches, like deeds and stuff like that. They can put signs out. They can put lock boxes on the door. They can do all those things for their employer. They can, if they're working for a property manager, they can order repairs. They can supervise the repairs. They can meet the contractors over there who are doing the repairs. They can do all of that. They can act as a courier. They can take this contract and deliver it here. They can take this check and deliver it there. They can, any of those things they're allowed to do. They can gather information. Do you think they can write advertisements though? What do you think?
No.
No.
They cannot write the advertisement. Can they place an advertisement? In other words, can they go put like a Facebook ad on?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes.
Yes,
As
if
long
they
as
have
they're
the
not writing
approval of
it.
the broker in
As long as they're
charge.
not writing it. As long as they're
Right.
getting it directly from somebody with the license, they can do that. Scheduling appointments, they can do that. Set up showings, make appointments, can do all those things. Confirm appointments, fill out forms. There's lots of stuff they can do. They can even type up offers and type up contracts, again, as long as they get the information directly from who?
The broker.
From the broker that employs them. So if the broker that employs them comes along and throws a contract on their desk that says, here, I've written in what I want on this, you type it up, can they do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, they can do that. Big one on the test that people miss. Can an unlicensed assistant deposit money in the trust account? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
As long as it's not their trust account.
This can't be their trust account, it can be the firm's trust account, but they can deposit it. Guess what? They can even balance the trust account. They can serve as a bookkeeper and keep the books and balance the trust account. But if there's a problem, it ain't gonna be the unlicensed person who's gonna be responsible. Who's the real estate commission gonna hold responsible?
The broker.
Their broker in charge. Absolutely. They can help pulling closing documents together. They can do commission checks. You could have an unlicensed assistant in your office that's writing all the commission checks. That's fine. All that's allowed. There are a few things they're not allowed to do, and these will definitely show up on a test. What can an unlicensed assistant who's employed by a real estate broker not do? What things are not allowed?
Hey Travis, can I confirm like one thing really quick before we go to what we can't do or what they cannot do? So for example, with me, I'm a 1099 employee. So I couldn't do any of this stuff because I'm not a W-2 employee. Is that correct?
That is correct. You cannot.
Okay. Because I still go and like will make deposits for them, but like obviously I don't balance the trust account because I ain't touching that mess. But I already know that like I can't do anything like that, but I will type up like leases and stuff like that for them, and that's okay. Is that right?
Fine. That's fine as an employee.
Okay.
As an employee.
But technically I should be a W-2 and not a 1099.
Right.
Okay.
That's what you can do. Exactly.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Sheila asked a question, when you list a property, is it automatically on the MLS and Zillow? Isn't that advertising? Well, it would certainly be on, being on the MLS and being on Zillow would certainly be advertising. Does that happen automatically? No. For it to get to the MLS, you have to place it in the MLS, which means you have to be a member of the MLS, you have to be a realtor. As far as how it gets to Zillow, there are multiple avenues how things end up on websites like Zillow. There's something called syndication, where Zillow will just take the information from the MLS and then create create that same page on their website essentially. That happens automatically if you allow it on your listings, or you could also have a broker's account on Zillow and go in and manually create your listings there. But yes, both of those would definitively be considered advertising.
So if you were a non-provisional broker that did not have a BIC, you couldn't put your property on MLS?
Couldn't put somebody else's property. You couldn't put property for someone on MLS. No, that is correct. That is right. Because that's a form of advertising. So what things can we not do as an unlicensed assistant? We cannot help people sell or lease property. You need a license for that. An unlicensed assistant cannot hold an open house by themselves. They can be there during an open house. They can help with an open house, but they cannot hold it by themselves. You need a license for that. An unlicensed assistant cannot call and solicit business. Now, this happens all the time, but it shouldn't. There should be no solicitation by somebody who does not have a real estate license. They shouldn't be handing out business cards. They shouldn't be calling people and saying, hey, we'd love to talk to you about selling your house. That's all considered solicitation, and that's not allowed by unlicensed people. They can't be paid referral fees. They cannot create advertisements. They can put things in, but they cannot create them. And I'm going to back up, and I'm going to talk about the one that is not on this list that we talked about earlier, but I'm going to remind you of it. They can't, go back. They can't show property
That's for sale.
for sale.
But they can show ones that are for lease, right?
That's exactly right. They can show property that is for lease, but they cannot show property that is for sale. Okay?
Travis, I have a question that was in the quiz about if a broker hired an unlicensed assistant, they should withhold Social Security taxes.
Yes. If you're an unlicensed assistant, you should be paid on a W-2, which means withholding of Social Security, Medicare, FICA, payment of unemployment insurance. You're an employee.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, y'all ready for a quiz?
Yes.
Aren't y'all excited? We should be. I'm going to put in the chat over here right now. There is the web address for your Chapter 7 quiz. It is a little bit longer than some of the other ones you've taken. I think it's 30 questions or so, 25, 30, something like that. I've also put it in the Google Classroom, and Seth is going to email it out to you all as well, that link, so you have it in 3 different places. But that is your fun for the rest of the evening, and otherwise I will see you tomorrow for Chapter 8, and you'll need your calculator tomorrow. And other than that, have a wonderful evening.
I have a question on Learn, Test, Pass.
Okay, go for it.
Chapters that don't have I think you've talked about this, that aren't up there yet for printing. Is that something that will be up eventually?